bit of a character flaw in as much as I hate doing anything twice. I also get bored very, very quickly, and I'm always looking for something new to do, some new challenges, and I like being in a position where I don't really kind of a lot of the time know what I'm doing, which if you've watched many of our videos you'd be aware of. The beauty I find in bonsai is that there's so much variety, and every now and again a tree will throw us a curveball, and that's exactly what this tree has done. This is a golden privet, and while it's not everybody's favourite tree because of the strange foliage colour, it came my way for nothing, so I figured it was probably worth putting some time into. What you can see if you look carefully is that parts of this tree are different colours. For some reason a large part of it has reverted to its natural green colour that privet has, and I've sort of scratched my head for a little while figuring out exactly what we're going to do with that, but I've got an idea and I'm going to show you a technique which we've been using here on the nursery for several years, and it'll help us to be able to deal with this particular issue. So the first thing I'm going to do is give this tree a good prune, and then you'll be able to see exactly what we've got and what we're working with. This lower part of the tree may have looked quite random, but it's all about building up a nice dense branch structure so that when we come to style this part of the tree we've got lots and lots to work with, so we can produce a nice mature image very quickly. But now that it's pruned you can see the extent of the problem, in as much as we've got all this golden privet here and we've got conventional green privet here. Conventional wisdom would be just to strip this off and carve it and make a nice feature of it, but in this case we've got a different solution that we can use, and surprisingly it's not air layering, but what it will do is involve one of these. At this point you can see the extent of the yellow growth on this tree comes nicely to here, and then from here on we've got a clean break where it's reverted to its natural green form. So what I'm going to do is just use the saw and just zip through this real quick. So there we go, nice clean cut. That piece is gone. The whole of the remaining tree is now the golden foliage. So now we'll just take this piece, put this outside and turn our attention to this piece. It's fairly obvious now that we're going to be propagating this part of the tree, so the first thing I need to do is remove some of this excess foliage, because by the time we get this rooted we don't want this foliage to have dried the material out completely. This is a technique that works really, really well with several varieties, particularly obviously privet. It works well with olive. I've also had it work with trident maples and field maple, Acer campestris, and also hawthorn on one or two occasions. I wouldn't suggest necessarily doing this straight off if you've had no experience of it and taking one of your best trees and cutting it in half, because sod's law, it's not going to work for you. But we've done this dozens and dozens and dozens of times, particularly with privet, and we've never actually had a failure, so it's quite a reliable technique. I also have seen this technique used with bougainvillea as well. As regards to the timing of this technique, it really is best done in midsummer when growth is in full swing, and you'll usually find within, depending on the vigour of the material that you're starting with of course, you'll usually find that it's rooted within 2 to 4 weeks. And then after a year in its pot, you can treat it much like you would any other bonsai material. So you can see here the reduction of this, there's not particularly much science to it, we're just getting rid of lots of foliage mass. It's not a good idea to remove all of the foliage, because it's the foliage that produces the energy in the tree that actually produces the rooting. So if you were to remove all of the leaves, you would probably still see the material root, but the process would be severely retarded and much higher risk. So that's about as far as I'm going to take that. So now I'm going to show you the bit that's really important. So in order to get this cutting to root, what we need is a pot, just a regular plastic pot, holes in the bottom for some drainage. The deeper the better in general. We also need some fine chipped bark, something that's fairly moist and wet, particularly for privet, will work very well. Where we've cut the end of that, we just clean that sawdust off. And out of interest, if you look at, if you can see that part of the tree, you can see here we've got a very pale yellow line, and then we've got a different colour in the middle, and this dark line. The centre of this tree is completely dead. The only live part is all around the edge there. That brown line is what stops the rot from the dead part of the tree corrupting or infecting the live part of the tree, and that's why you never need to worry about a tree and its health if it's completely hollow, because a tree has this capacity to compartmentalise damage that it may have suffered and die back over the years. So what we're going to have to do is bury this trunk quite deeply in this pot. So just going to throw a couple of inches of bark in the bottom there, and we've got to get this about as deep down in there as we actually can do. So just make sure that's nice and clean, all of that cut material from the saw is gone. We'll push that down in there as deep as it'll go, and it's just settled on that bark in the bottom there. Now all we've got to do is fill this in. There's no particular science to this, but what we want to do is make sure that this trunk is at least 3/4 buried. So just keep going around here, settling this bark in, packing it in nice and tight, and like I say, once this trunk is 3/4 buried and the branches then are just above the ground, and then that's as far as we need to go. I've now got this bark in here. This is pressed in about as tight as I can get it. It's important to make sure that that bark is in good contact with that cut edge, and that's not wide in there, and as you can see that's nice and firm. There's about yay much of the trunk left sticking above the surface, and then obviously all the branches. We haven't buried any leaves. That was what the pruning was for. So now what we want to do is give this a good soak. So you want to thoroughly wet this bark. We want that absolutely sopping wet. Just keep going at it and going at it until the water puddles on the top, and she's running nice out of the bottom as well. Give that a good settle, and then the last part, just chuck a bag over there. Then all we have to do is take that, put that somewhere warm. It doesn't want to be in the shade, it wants to be in some good light, but you don't want any wind on it. We want to keep it nice and warm, and the warmer it is, the faster that's going to root. Once you start to see extensions of growth after a couple of weeks, or after say 4 or 5 weeks, if you begin to see roots coming out the bottom of the holes in the pot, then obviously you know that you're rooted, you're good to go. So the bag can come off, the plant can go outside, and it can continue on its way. Been about 4 weeks since we took this cutting, and there's roots coming out of the bottom of the pot. You move the bark inside and you can see roots, and also the main telltale sign after the leaf drop, when it's cut, you quickly begin to see new buds forming, and as those new buds begin to open and extend, you see the roots, then the plastic bag can come off. And this has been in the greenhouse since the bag has been off about a week, and now the tree's beginning to do very well. One of the things I've done is just gone around the surface and started to remove the bark, because if you remember, we buried most of the trunk under bark, and what we don't want is roots coming out of all different places. So but gradually we'll reduce that bark down and expose more of the trunk, and so ultimately we will get roots forming around the base of the trunk where we need, where it was cut off, and so that's going to be useful for down the road when it goes into a pot. But from this stage on, this is just treated like any other tree. You can go outside, it's watered, it's fertilised in the regular way, because basically it's a rooted plant, so you can just treat this like any other material. It's now been 4 years since I started this Privet project, and life got busy in that time. It got pushed to the back of the bench and forgotten. However, I recently dug it out, and being winter here in the UK, I decided it was time that we got this finished. So I've taken all the leaves off, which took an age, and it's now ready to start to get into this. Where we cut the big green piece off at the top, obviously it left a great big cut, and over the intervening years all of that dead wood that comprised the centre of this tree is rotted out. So if we have a dig around in here, you'll see there's all sorts of very soft material here that's just basically broken down over that time. And one of the big issues with Privet, particularly in the UK, is that the wood, or dead wood, is ostensibly garbage. It's very, very soft, it rots very quickly. Because of the time that's gone by with this tree, it's made all the difficult decisions for us. So what I'm going to do now is basically get into this, start cleaning out the dead wood. We'll get some wire on it, we'll get it shaped up and styled and see what we end up with. The tree has died all the way through the front. You can see none of this has been carved, it's all happened completely naturally. We can see on the back here we've got some wonderful bracket fungus. People worry about fungus in trees, but this bracket fungus is basically consuming the dead part of the tree, and we can have a look at that, because around this area is completely dead. All of that wood's going to have to come out, and then once it's all cleaned out we can basically get some wire on it and get some shape into it. So here you can see these bracket fungus. These have grown over 4 years. Each year it produces a new horseshoe, and these are great. They're really, really hard, and they'll sit on there for years. And what I was saying was that these are basically consuming the dead part of the tree. They're not bothering the live part. So this part here, I can see by the colour, is all alive. This piece is alive, and here it's dead. And if I just take this knife, you can see that goes all the way in. There's just a skin on there, and then behind it we've got dead material, and you can see there that just comes out, and you can see here just how soft that wood has become inside. There's nothing we can do with that, obviously it's completely rotten. So the work is going to involve initially here basically going through this, removing everything that's dead and then everything that's soft, and we'll see what that leaves us. But you can see this wood has just turned to I don't know, it's not even got the consistency of wet cardboard, it's just complete mush. And you can, this goes all the way through to that big hollow that runs all the way down the front. And various other parts of the tree, there are large areas of dead as well. So we're going to end up really with a completely hollow skeleton of a tree here, once we get all this soft material out. And as I say, there's no good trying to keep a lot of this external material, because even though it's relatively hard, a couple of damp winters and that's just going to rot away as well. So throughout this whole tree we're going to clean this back to what is solid and good and strong material that's actually alive, and then we won't see any more of this decay happening. So just coming in a little closer to this hole, you can see here that this is very, very deep. See, that's swallowed 6 inches of knife, so that shows us that that's gone right the way through. Part of that is because when this tree was potted, the base of it was cut flat so that we can get it into a shallow pot. That's left a large area of wood exposed to the soil, which is never going to callus over, and as a consequence a lot of this rot has come up from underneath. So there's a massive hollow here, and on this edge here you can see there's no live material there at all, but that's all fairly hard. But going upwards as well, you can see that's all completely soft in there as well. So like I say, if we'd have been hollowing this a few years ago when it would have been hardwood, that would have been a significant task to get in here and sort all this out. But because it's gone completely soft and mushy, the tree has made all of that decision for us, and so you can see this has literally just become fluff. We're looking here at the back of this tree, and you can see here was a branch removed from here and an older one from here, and again another example of this having rotted through. Basically you can see this is all just completely rotted through, all completely dead. And this is a really exciting prospect for material like this, because you don't exactly know what we're going to get, but I can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be really nice and really interesting. And you can see just how easily all this soft material comes out. This is the place where we cut the green piece off originally, and you can see all of this has rotted out completely naturally. The bees have been in there and the wasps have dug it all out, and if I shove a knife in there, you can see that basically the whole tree is starting to kind of come apart, because basically the wood that holds it all together has gone. But we've got live areas down both sides of the tree, down the front, the back, all around. So what we're going to be able to do with this is basically hollow this all the way through, take all this rotten material out. All this here is all dead, all of this is soft, so we'll chase all of this back to the point where we hit the green wood, and what's left behind is going to be really solid and hard, so there's no danger that this tree is going to fall apart or not be useful for development and progression as the years go by. But I appreciate that at this point it may freak out a lot of people, but like I say, you can see this is all quite flexible, which may give us some potential for moving that down the line when we get to actually style it. But another thing of note, having waited so long to get to this stage, is that I've not been the time's not been wasted. You can see here we've got a massive head of twigging, and where this has grown from its original cuts on the trunk, you can see we've got some nice thick branches here, and they've been cut, so one has become 2, and then 2 have become 4, and then 4 have become 8 and 60. So we've got loads and loads of quite fine ramification here, and even though it's not been wired, so it's not shaped, none of it is so thick that we can't bend it, so all of this is going to be able to be moved quite easily with wire to create the structure that we want for this tree. There's probably a lot more branches here than we're going to need in the final design, but better to have them than not. So what we do is clean out the soft material, and then just to finish this off, which I'll show you, we're going to clean this remaining soft material out, and we will leave the hard stuff behind, and that we're not going to cut through. So all I do for that is just use a little flexible shaft on a small power tool with a wire brush, and that's just got to gently just brush all that out. And as always with wire brushes, we use them as a reasonably the slowest speed that we can. And you can see when the soft material comes out, we're just left with that nice dark wood underneath. And that's as far as we need to go. We're not looking to strip any wood away from this. It's just the rotted material that we want to get rid of. So now I've brushed that off, and you can see and you can hear this is all nice and hard. We're going to have to use an end brush to get into 1 or 2 little holes here, but overall that's as far as we need to go in terms of cleaning out this cleaning out all this rotted material. now early autumn here in the UK, and after a good summer's growth, I think both of these trees are starting to look quite presentable. They're far from being good quality bonsai, but the point of this video was to take a technique that perhaps you wouldn't have been aware of and show you how it works, and I think that the results are reasonable. The yellow tree is looking a bit worse for wear. We've had a scorching summer this year, so there's a few brown ends on the leaves, and some of it's whited out a little bit because they don't like too much sun. Anything variegated or yellow prefers a shady position, but foolishly I left it out in the sun, so it kind of got a little bit scorched. The green bit has got a little bit of dark green on it because, again, just too much sun. But overall the trees have done quite well. I'm quite pleased with the results, and I'm quite looking forward now to taking these trees forwards and developing them a lot further in the future. So hopefully, like I say, that's given you an insight into an unusual technique, and I think it's quite unique to see two trees which are actually the same tree. One is green and one is yellow. So thanks for watching.